We're breaking down the Clemson defense here at the Voice of College Football, courtesy Jason Priester. Jason joins us on a regular basis to break down the Clemson Tigers. You can join him on allclemson.com on the SI platform. And, of course, like the video, share the videos out on social media, because if you enjoy the content, others will as well. So you might as well share the videos out on social media. Bring other people in here to talk college football with us. All right. Jason, I know it's only one game, but it's basically one game over 3 seasons, looking at the 2018 championship game against Alabama versus the LSU game versus the Ohio State game. And again, it's not like the Clemson defense fell apart. It performed extremely well throughout the season, but against the very elite competition, what they did to Tua and company, which was a prolific offense, which has proven out in the pros and in the rest of their college careers, versus the LSU game versus the Ohio State game. Is this Clemson defense, and in particular, as we start with the defensive front, going to bring us more back to that 2018 version?
I expect to see something similar to that. I think they know they got whipped by Ohio State. I mean, there's just no way to sugarcoat that. They got pushed around. They got dominated up front. Clemson, they had a lot of injuries in that defensive front last year. I don't think Tyler Davis was ever fully healthy after getting injured in the season opener. They had to rely heavily on 2 true freshmen in Brian Bresee and Miles Murphy. And as talented as those guys are, they're still true freshmen, and we're still learning last year. I expect those guys to take big jumps in their development. Brian Bresee was a force to be reckoned with from listening to the coaches throughout the spring. Miles Murphy's elevated his game to a whole nother level if you listen to the coaches in the spring. Xavier Thomas is supposedly in some of the best shape, maybe the best shape of his playing career as we speak. I think he posted on Twitter yesterday, maybe he's down to 265 or 275. Maybe the lightest he's been since he's a freshman. Don't hold me to that, but I saw where he tweeted out his weight, and he's happy with where he's at from a weight and physical standpoint after being not healthy all last season. Let's just put it like that. But and I think they're going to have some depth too. KJ Henry is in a good place after having I don't know what he had. He had some kind of procedure after the season. He was playing banged up last year. I expect him to take a big jump this year. I think Justin Mascoll is going to take a big jump too. We've been waiting on it, and it hasn't happened yet, but I think it's going to come this year. And there's some young interior defensive linemen that I think is going to have an impact too. I think this is Ruka Rojo. We might see Trey Williams cracking it, too deep and getting on the field at times. But I think this is going to be a dominant defensive line. Clemson's had to rely a lot on blitz in the last 2 years to get to the quarterback, unlike what we saw in 2018 where they could get lots of pressure with just the front four and not having to rely on the blitz for that. And I think we're going to see them get back to that in 2021.
All right, we got Jason Priester on the line breaking down the Clemson defense. Of course, it's got a stiff test in week number 1 against the Georgia Bulldogs, and that running game in particular, and what we saw out of JT Daniels the last 4 games of 2020. Looking at the linebackers, James Skalski wasn't able to stay on the field for the final half against Ohio State. That's the last time we saw him, was taking a shot at Justin Fields. And so the linebackers, how do they set up with, of course, Mike Jones moving on to LSU?
I think this linebacker core is going to be really good. Skalski's another guy that stayed hurt a lot of last season, and he's a guy that is really, you could listen to him talk during the spring. He is really taking the performance in that Ohio State game personally, and listening to all those other guys on the defense talk. He doesn't let them forget it either. He reminds them of it. They're using it as motivation, kind of the way Ohio State used the loss to Clemson in 2019 as motivation last year. Clemson's turning it around and doing that themselves. But I expect Skalski to be Skalski. He's not this elite level talented guy, but he knows the ins and outs of Venables' defense. He knows where to be. He knows where to line up. He knows his responsibilities. He knows everybody else's responsibilities. He's the quarterback of that defense. Trenton Simpson, that's who I expect to, replace Mike Jones Jr. over there in that Sam. He can play inside some too, but this is a former 5-star guy And I think at least, he started playing more and more as the season progressed last year. And after Mike Jones came back from his injury, he started playing a little less and a little less and a little less. And I think the writing was kind of on the wall for him. I know he wanted to play inside more too, but Simpson was just going to be too hard to keep off the field. He's just that good. And he showed it down the stretch last season. He's going to be really good. And then they got Balin Spector coming back too. Nobody ever talks about Spector, but like Skowski, he's not this former 5-star guy, but he knows he's just a football player. He's got a high football IQ. He's got a nonstop motor, and he just makes plays. And even behind those guys, this is going to be a deep group of linebackers. Golly, I can't even think. I had his name right on the tip of my tongue. But there's some deep. This is a deep group of linebackers, and I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name right now. Bentley.
I'm looking at Malcolm Green. I'm looking at Levante Bentley.
That's who I was trying to think of. Levante Bentley. He's going into his 3rd season, and it's taking a little bit longer for the light to come on for him. I think he's another guy who shut down hurt last year. Kind of slowed down his development. I expect to see him get on the field more this season. This is a very talented linebacker, and depth's played a part in keeping him off the field. And but yeah, name some more of those guys.
Got Bentley, Malcolm Green.
Malcolm Green, he's a nickel guy. He was a freshman last year. I expect him to be on the field a lot this year. He's probably more of a safety type nickel guy than a linebacker, but he's going to be a big part of Venable's defense. We'll talk about safety in a minute, but yeah, I'm real high on Malcolm Green. I think he's got a bright future.
Jake Venables.
Venable's another guy that was hurt last year. Skowski's back up, broke his arm, I think it was, and he'll be back fully healthy this year. He's another guy, he's not the former 5-star, but he knows his responsibility. He's usually where he's supposed to be. He rarely takes bad angles. He's solid in run defense most of the time. He should even be a little bit better this year.
Balin Spector racked up 64 tackles to lead the team last year, 10.5 tackles for loss and 4.5 sacks. And you mentioned Simpson, even though he didn't play a ton, he still made plays in the backfield. 4 sacks, 6.5 tackles for loss on his 28 stops.
Yeah, I'm real high on Simpson. I think he's going to be a force on this defense this year. I'm not saying he's like Isaiah Simmons, but Venables will be able to use him in a bunch of different ways, kind of similar to the way he used Simmons. He can line up in multiple spots on the field.
Talking of the Clemson defense here at the Voice of College Football, is it going to be more like 2018 or more like 2019 and 20 in the postseason? The regular season stats were certainly stellar for this group the last 2 seasons. We got Jason Priester on the line from allclemson.com on the SI platform. So you're going to see Darian Kendrick on the field in week 1. It's just not going to be with the same colors. So he's moved on to Georgia. Just looking at the cornerbacks and the safeties in total, it looks like inexperience at corner, but a lot of safety experience coming back.
Yeah. To me, one of the biggest questions on this team is safety. They got a lot of guys that are talented that needed time to develop. And I'm expecting those guys to step up and produce this year. They had last season where some of them took their lumps last year, like Landon Sanders, Joseph Charleston, Jalen. Golly, was his last name Smith? There's so many of them I can't remember all their names right off the top of my head. But
Jalen Phillips.
Jalen Phillips. Yeah, those guys. They played a lot last year. Took some lumps, and I think they're going to be better this year. I thought Clemson was a little undersized at safety too. Another thing I think the shutdown hurt with, they weren't in the weight room all spring and summer. But with Nolan Turner coming back, he's kind of a on-the-field coach. He's been around so long. I think this group of safeties is going to be better than what we saw last year, and they're going to need to be because, Ohio State torched Clemson secondary last year. LSU torched Clemson secondary year before last. I mean, Those guys have got to be better in the big games than what they have been. But I also like what Clemson's got at corner, too. I know there's not a ton of experience. I think Andrew Booth has got the talent to be as good as any cover corner in the country. He's just that talented. He's got it. I know he had some injuries last year he was dealing with off and on that kept him from ever really being 100%. I think Sheridan Jones is another guy who's going into his third season. He doesn't get a lot of publicity. He took some lumps last year too, but I think he's going to take a step in his development and be really good. Another guy I'm really high on at corner is Fred Davis, a former 5-star guy. He's going into his second year. And there's a freshman coming in named Nate Wiggins, who's I think is going to be really good. The coaches were really thrilled with how he progressed during the spring. I think we could see him on the field a lot in this secondary. I'm not saying he's going to start or anything, but Clemson likes to roll in and a lot of guys. So I think he's going to play a lot, and I think they're going to rely on him this year. I think they're going to need to rely on him because corner is one of the spots where they do not have a lot of depth. I think they've got 6 scholarship cornerbacks maybe, so they're going to need Wiggins to step up and produce this year.
Booth, though technically not a starter last year, still led the way with 27 tackles in the secondary, 3 tackles for loss, and a couple picks and a sack. Got Jason Priester on the line.
I saw a number from Booth the other day, and I wish I'd have wrote it down, and I can't remember what it was, but it was something after the first game about how many passing yards. I think he'd give up less than 100 yards passing the rest of the season or something like that. It was something impressive after the season opener. I can't remember what it was specifically, though. I remember I had to do a double take on it, though. But, yeah, I'm really high on Andrew Booth. I think he's going to have a big season, and we'll start seeing his name being mentioned maybe first, second round of some of these mock drafts toward the end of the season. He's that good.
I'll roll out a couple stats about the Clemson defense that pretty much point to what we're talking about. Not necessarily everybody remembering the one disappointing game at the end of the year, but the way the defense has performed throughout the season. So Clemson surrendered 30 touchdown drives and 11 field goals last year in 166 opponent possessions. 75% of the time they had a success rate. That was 9th best in the country of just stopping teams' non-scoring drives.
Yeah. Brent Venables is one of the highest paid assistant coaches in the country for a reason, man. He's what Clemson's done on defense in the last few years is just been so impressive. I don't care if they do play in the ACC. I know the ACC is not the SEC or the Big 10 or the Big 12. It's probably with the Pac-10 or the Pac-12 is probably the 2 weakest Power 5 conferences out there. But, you know, it's still Power 5 football, and they're just dominating teams. But one area I do think that they've got to get better in is not getting caught looking at the sidelines when the ball is snapped. You know, I know Brent Venables loves to wait to the last minute to send the signals in, but we saw some teams taking advantage of that last year. That first Notre Dame game, they were doing some things to kind of catch Clemson on their heels. Ohio State took advantage of it and really burned Clemson with it. We've seen Syracuse do it in the past and have success. But I think that's something they might have to, look into tweaking a little bit this year so they don't get caught on their heels quite so often, especially like we saw in the Ohio State game.
And the sack rate was still the 3rd best in the country among Power 5 teams last year and could be even better this year.
And if you look at that, and if you look at the sacks, it's spread out. It's not like 1 or 2 guys getting all the sacks. I can't remember who led the team in sacks last year, but I think it was only like 5.5 or something like that was the most any one guy had. So the sacks are coming from everywhere. It's not just 1 or 2 guys you're having to rely on. Like we talked about earlier, he's bringing the pressure from everywhere. Brent Venables has never been scared to blitz. That's for sure.
Spector 4.5, Murphy 4, Venables 3, Simpson 4, Breezy 4. That's what I'm looking at right here. We got then you got Bentley hit 3.5
in very limited playing time.
Yeah, Xavier Thomas had 3.5 as well. So yeah, a ton of guys there.
I remember when Thomas, I remember I had made a prediction last year that Thomas would come back, after he came back and lead the team in sacks. And going into the ACC championship game, I was looking good, man. He was tied for the team lead, and then he didn't play no more the rest of the season. I'm expecting a big year from him. This is what I would call his money year. He's got to produce this year if he wants to go as high as he wants to go in the draft next year. He needs a big season, and I think he's going to have one.
Talking Clemson football here at the Voice of College Football. Please like the videos, share the videos out on social media, and subscribe right here. Also, check out, of course, Jason's work at All Clemson SI. BT Potter hit on 18 of 23. He's back.
Yeah, Potter's a weapon, and he puts every kickoff into the end zone where Clemson doesn't have to worry about a kickoff return. We saw in the 2015 national championship game against Alabama what bad coverage can do for you, and probably cost Clemson a national championship. And ever since then, they've made it a priority to not let that happen again. And BT Potter is a weapon. He's got probably one of the strongest legs in the country. He can kick field goals from 60 yards, and if he don't want you to run one back on a kickoff, you're not going to. He can kick it out the back of the end zone pretty much every time, man. That's some kind of weapon. And their punter, Will Spires, he's been around a long time. Clemson fans used to rag on him a lot because he doesn't have the strongest leg. But I'm telling you, he was solid last year. Last year he had his best season by far. He was solid for Clemson in the punting game. He's not going to be a guy that routinely kicks 50-yard punts. You're not going to see him hitting 160 or anything like that. But he's going to be a guy that he knows how to kick them where teams aren't able to return them against you. So the net's always good.
And then with the punt and kickoff return duties, Michael Dukes is listed right here as the guy, but it seems like from team to team, that's something they typically sort out in August. Don't want to get your best player killed back there, but want to have somebody obviously that's going to secure the ball, number one, and then it's going to be some kind of threat.
Yeah, I wouldn't even venture a guess who's going to be returning kicks right now. I think that's going to be an open competition well into the fall, but we've seen Clemson in the past say not use their best returners till late in the season. Like over the last couple of years, we've seen them use Travis Etienne as a kick returner, but not until late in the season in the bigger games. I know they've used Dixon to return kicks some. We might see him back there, but it wouldn't surprise me to maybe see a guy like Shipley returning kicks because he's so fast and he's got good hands. I wouldn't even venture a guess as to who's going to return kicks right now, though. There's just no telling. There's a lot of guys on that roster capable of doing it. But like you said, you don't want to get your best players hurt either, though. So you got to walk a fine line with that thing there.
All right, Jason, we appreciate the recap, running through the Clemson offense and the Clemson defense. Good stuff.
Anytime, man, anytime.
All right. And before I let you go, nothing on the recruiting front, anything to mention there?
Clemson got a couple of commitments last week, and there's a guy going to announce tomorrow. I think he's going to announce for Clemson if you want to do that.
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that. Here we go. Voice of College Football breaking down Clemson. Of course, the month of June, as we've talked about for weeks and weeks and weeks, we knew was going to be huge for all these teams across the country, including the Clemson Tigers. We got Jason Priester on the line from allclemson.com. All right, Jason, what's the latest? Couple commits on board.
Yeah, Clemson picked up a couple of defensive back commits, last week coming off the elite retreat. 4-star cornerback Toriano Pride, 4-star safety Sherrod Koval. Two guys that Clemson had made priorities in this class, and two really talented guys. I think Clemson fans are going to love Sherrod Koval especially. He's a hard-hitting safety, loves to play up on the line of scrimmage, never shies away from contact, has a motor that never stops. Might need to work on some of the fine-tuning his coverage skills once he gets to this level. Nothing that a little bit of, college coaching can't fix. But he's going to be a really good player for Clemson. Same with Pride. He's got a high ceiling as a cornerback. I think those are two guys that Clemson fans are going to really like. They also picked up a commitment from a kicker, Billy Gunn. I think he's rated the number 2 kicker by 24/7. Kicking World ranks him as the number 1 kicker in the country. He was at Dabo Swinney's camps, one of Dabo Swinney's camps right before the elite retreat, I think the Friday before, and they invited him to stay the whole weekend. And he was kicking field goals in Death Valley, and he kicked one from 62 yards out, I think it was, and I think Dabo Swinney said it would have been good from 75, maybe, easy. I've talked to the kid's kicking coach at his kicking academy, and he just raves about him, says he's got one of the strongest legs he's ever seen on a high school player. So then we got another kid that's going to commit tomorrow, Jihad Campbell, 4-star defensive end. He's taken a lot of visits this month, and I, as it sits right now, I think Clemson's in pretty good shape to get this guy. I don't never like to speak in absolutes because you never know. I've got burned doing that before. I'm never going to do it again. But as we sit here today, I think Clemson's in pretty good shape. I feel pretty good about where they stand. I think they'll land Campbell tomorrow.
All right. I'm going to edit that real quick just because I want to look up Campbell's numbers.
Yeah, I don't have them right off the top of my head here.
I got you here. Campbell, the 7th rated edge rusher in the nation, according to 247 Sports Composite, a top 20 player in the state of Florida, number 18, number 143 nationally. At 6'3", 215 out of IMG Academy. They, I've heard, produce some pretty good football players down there.
Yeah,
typically.
They've been known to put out 1 or 2 guys that turn out to be really good. But yeah, this Campbell's a really good prospect. You know, he's an interesting prospect. He shows a lot of talent coming off the edge, rushing the quarterback. He might be a guy that needs a year to acclimate once he gets to college. He's taken a lot of visits this month. He was at the elite retreat, and I felt good about where Clemson stands with him ever since that weekend. I still feel good about where they stand with him. I'm not going to speak in absolutes and say Clemson's guaranteed to get him tomorrow, but he's going to announce tomorrow, and I feel real good about Clemson's chances of landing him tomorrow.
Pride, the 23rd rated cornerback in the country at 5'11", 172, 4th rated player in the state of Missouri. I've seen Clemson go out to St. Louis for some players here recently. They're in the mix for some of those St. Louis kids that play pretty good football there. And then you got Koval, who you're high on, 11th rated safety in the nation, top 10 rated player in the state of Virginia. Both players just inside the 200 on the composite. Jason Priester on the line, breaking down Clemson football for us. Jason, we always appreciate you stopping by.
I appreciate you having me on, Mark, man. Thanks.